Hi, I'm Kara.
And I'm Adam, and welcome back to Crunchy Cozy Games. So we have been counting down our top 100 games of all time.
That we played last year.
That we played last year, of course. Now, the question that I think a lot of people have asked is, why do you guys have so many games? And to me, that question is a lot like, well, there's people that have like a wine cellar or like
Sure.
a bunch of collected wine. And the reason for that is, well, when you have company over, when you have guests, you want to have the perfect wine for the right occasion, something special to enjoy all together. And for me, a game collection is like that.
Yeah.
It's like having something for everybody, depending on what the mood is, depending on kind of the people that you're playing with. It's having something to kind of converse in conversation, but
Yeah.
also like have something to do.
That's fair. I also think, a key word there is collection, right? I think that it is something that there is such variety in board games now. I feel like when I was growing up, it was a lot of just like, oh, do you have Monopoly? And the big one on the scene was like Cranium.
Right,
And,
right.
I feel like board gaming has come so far
Oh, yeah.
in my life. And I really enjoy kind of seeing just like what people come up with and the way, I just imagine the way that people's minds work that are able to create games and design something that is so elegant and fun, and it's just so cool. And what game you play can really set the tone for what kind of evening you're gonna have.
Right.
And
Like, for instance, if you want to have kind of like an insightful night, you might play something a little puzzly. And
Sure.
if you want to have something full of laughter, you might do like a puzzle game or something like social deduction.
Yeah.
And if you want your friends to stop being your friends, you play something like Twilight Imperium.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that it also is a really great way to, get to know people. I think that, we can kind of sit down with different groups of friends and figure out what game is going to be really fun to play with them, which is a different game that's going to be fun with a different group of people. I mean, it's so fun to have this as a hobby and kind of be kind of a hub for games. It's really fun. I enjoy it a lot.
I think the best part for me is introducing people to a new game. And
Yeah.
that's something that they probably wouldn't have heard of.
Sure.
And I will say one of the best things I feel like about the hobby in more recent years is that if you go to a Target or a Walmart or one of those big box retailers, you're starting to see some of these like great hobby games in those stores. Whereas before you would only have the Hasbro and the Milton Bradley stuff.
Yeah.
So it's come, like you said, it's come a long way. And I'm excited to see where it goes because there's been so many huge breakthrough hits, like Wingspan comes to mind. And now just about anybody in the hobby has played Wingspan, and that has permeated to so many other groups as well.
Right. People that aren't quote unquote board gamers.
Yes. Like we play that with my parents all the time.
Exactly.
And it's a great game, and they absolutely love it, and they love seeing all the different bird cards, and it's easily one that we can bring to events.
It's pretty accessible, yeah.
So that being said, why don't we go ahead and jump into it? So today we are discussing 40 through 31.
So we're getting into the top third.
Yeah, this is kind of like, in my opinion, this is the last list of like the middle section of games.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
now we get, after that, then we get into the top 30.
Yeah.
And for me, at least, when I was looking through this list, it was like, wow, just about any of these games are ones that if somebody came over and said like, I've never played that, I would really love to do it, I'd be like, great, let's put it out on the table.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I'm really excited to talk about these. So let me first kick it off by talking about my number 40, a game we actually just played again recently.
Ooh, okay.
It's another little puzzly one, and that is Verdant.
Ooh, yeah.
So Verdant was a Kickstarter that delivered to us last year, or maybe it was late. I think actually it was late 2022 now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
But it is like a spatial puzzly game. It's in that same vein as like a Calico or Cascadia.
It seems like they have a type.
Yeah, but this one is more freeform
It
than Calico, and it's less freeform than Cascadia.
Yes.
Because you've basically got a 3x5 grid that you're building.
And you are locked into that grid.
Right. And you have to go room, plant, room, plant, and then so they can't. 2 rooms can't touch each other, and 2 plants can't touch each other.
Right.
The plant cards that you place, they prefer a type of light. So it's either that they prefer full light or half shade or full shade. And so each of the rooms has one of those markings on the edges. And so you're trying to match that up to get verdancy points. You place leaves on the cards, and then when they reach the target verdancy, then it scores the points that are on the card.
And you get to put a little cute pot on the card.
Yes, and the pots also score some extra points. So everybody's kind of racing to fill those out. There's some special powers and abilities. And I love puzzly games like this because it does kind of feel like there's the ultimate solution somehow, and then there's just a little bit of that like luck mechanic into it.
There is. I mean, in our most recent playthrough, for instance, there was a good stretch of turns where there were no dark blue rooms that came up at all, and that seemed to be the one that everybody was searching for. Yeah.
Well, and the nice thing about this one, and again, you know, and not to keep knocking on Calico, but what's great about this game is that they do have a mechanism for resetting the store if you need to, and so you can pay the thumbs to do that, and then you can reset the store, which is nice. But yeah, I really like the game a lot. It's taught me a lot about plants. Not so much that I ever want to get more plants, because I don't like being a plant murderer. But it is very cute. I find it incredibly cozy.
It is a super, super cozy game. I like it a lot.
But yeah, my number 40, Verdant.
All right, number 40 for me is one that we've talked about already, and that is Cupidos. The variation on a deck builder that I like is the bag builder.
Sure.
So I really like that, you know, you're building your pool of dice, and just like the rolling is so satisfying because you're getting like this handful of like, you know, 10 dice sometimes. I think that the racing aspect is really fun. I'm really excited to play this one with different dice powers. I know we've talked about that already.
And the different maps.
And the different maps. Yeah. We've kind of played the same one a couple of times, and I'm really interested to see how it plays differently with different maps, different dice. And yeah, it's a really fun, it's a very silly game. It's very silly, but it does have that kind of like push your luck mechanic. That, man, the tension that you can build where you're just like the last one rolling and you're like, should I do it? Should I do it?
You absolutely should. Always do.
You should always take the chance. Except when you shouldn't. And that's the hard thing to figure out. So for me, number 40 is Cupidos.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. 39 for me is another game that we've talked about already. It's one that is fairly new to us. It's a cute little 2-player game called Boop.
Ooh, Boop.
Boop, as you talked about before, has a very simple premise. Smirk and Dagger, the company that published it, they've got kind of a reputation for these like simple, easy to understand games that are really difficult to master. And this one is just like that. So basically the premise is you're placing a kitten on this adorable quilted mat, which you actually flip the game box upside down and put this mat over it for your game board.
Which is like the fact that the bed is raised.
It's very darling.
It's cute.
But you're placing a kitten somewhere on the grid, and if it is adjacent to any other kittens, it boops them one space in the same direction. The goal is that you want to get 3 in a row, but of course you can't just set 3 in a row because they'll boop one next to the other. So you have to kind of go with where your opponent is and figure that out.
Boop them into place while also booping your opponents off the bed.
Right, which it's very tricky because if your opponent falls off the bed, then they basically get that kitten back and they have to reset it. Once you get a line of 3 kittens, then you get cats, and then the ultimate goal is that you want to get 3 cats in a row. So it sounds really simple, but it's very tricksy.
It is deceptively simple.
But I still think this is a really cozy game. It's thinky, but I never felt like turns were taking forever.
No, because they can't really. They can't really. The board is small enough that, you know, because sometimes there is also some strategy in sacrificing a cat.
Sure.
It sounds terrible, but you know what? Sacrificing a piece
Right.
to further your next move.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they're not being sacrificed. They're just being booped off the bed.
They just fall off.
And if you know anything about cats, they're coming right back.
They sure
That's
are.
how that happens.
Mhm.
But yeah, my number 39 is Boop.
39 for me is Land versus Sea.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a nice little 2-player, kind of puzzly game.
Not too far
know?
off of where I ranked it
Yeah,
as well.
it's true. Just in a different segment,
Mhm.
but yeah, pretty close. I think that this game is really, it's very fun to just, it's a good one when we don't have like a lot of time.
Yeah.
You know, like this is I really want to play something, but it's getting late. And we can just pull that out. It doesn't take up a huge ton of space. You can easily play it on just like a regular table or a coffee table or something. But that aspect of trying to find that perfect piece
Yeah.
it's so hard. And I don't know, did you talk about the fact that you can sometimes steal people's pieces?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, so there are some of the pieces will have different powers on them, and you can be like a pirate, and you can raid somebody else's camp. And the pieces are double-sided.
Right.
And so, when you have your hand of pieces, you have your 2 little hexes at a time. And so you should only be showing one side where it's visible to the other person.
Right.
And so that's either holding them up or flat on the table. And so when somebody goes to steal a piece from you, they only have that one side visible. So they don't know what, maybe the one that you want to play is on that flip side, and
Right.
they don't know what it is.
And it's the same for drawing a piece as
Yes.
well.
Yeah. So, because you have to put it in like 2 stacks or something like that. It is a quick game. It's thinky. It's fun.
It's great.
Yeah. It's number 39 for me is Land and Sea. Very
Cool.
fun.
Love it. My number 38 is one of my biggest surprises from the past year. It was a game I didn't really have any expectations for, but I'll say the art style, at least on the box and on the back of the box, looked kind of cartoony, and even the art style of the cards and the tiles and all that, I was surprised by how vibrant it was.
Oh,
because this was a really thinky game that I ended up coming away from really enjoying, and that is The Wolves. So yeah, I mean, the art style in this is very vibrant. Like
it is.
The
Yeah.
colors are so beautiful, and the wolf style is really cool.
They're kind of angular.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't really anticipating this being like a thinky kind of area control game.
Yeah.
What I found really interesting about this was just how it takes a usual mechanism in a lot of games, like area control and just like using cards to move. This one you actually use tiles to move. So you're flipping these different tiles over that match the terrain on the map. And so if you can move 3 spaces and you flip a desert space over, you can move 3 spaces, but you have to end on a desert space.
Right.
And so each type of wolf, I guess, have their mastery over a specific terrain. Like you've got your desert wolves and your tundra wolves.
Well, and that just means that you have one piece that is the same on both sides.
Right, exactly.
So you always have the option to go to that terrain.
But that's important because if you flip over 2 of the same terrain type, it increases the effect of that action that you're taking.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so there's some actions that require, for instance, 3 pieces being flipped over, which there's only one option for that. And
Right.
It means you have to flip over your mastery tile.
Yes.
That's really cool to me because you're really kind of like plotting out your actions and trying to figure out like how to move and get things over there. But then you're also adding dens, you're adding alpha wolves. And my favorite thing is you're converting other people's wolves onto your team,
That's
which
true.
it's very mean, but it's very cool when it works.
It's super mean.
But yeah, it is just really quite a fascinating game that I'm really glad we played because I've never played anything quite like it.
Yeah,
So,
it's super unique to our collection.
yeah, I really love it, and I'm really looking forward to playing it again because I think this one might end up going higher on my list.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, 38, The Wolves.
38 for me is Dune.
Huh.
Yeah.
Genuinely surprised.
Yeah. I mean, I had a great time when we played this game.
Is it because I'm such a great teammate?
Yep. That's it. No, I think that, I played as the Fremen.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one where I think that the theme and having read the book, I haven't read more than one. I've just read the first one. I know that you love all of them.
Well, I have read all of them. I'll just say that.
Okay, fair. But having read Dune and having and playing as, I think that the way that they represented the factions, plays really well.
Right.
And even when you have those wacky combinations of alliances, I think that it still it creates a really interesting story.
Yes.
That isn't completely out of character for the source material.
Yeah.
I think it was really interesting having the sandstorms go around the board and chase everybody and seeing where people ended up in pockets and just the fighting mechanism I think is a really interesting one as well.
Where you're wagering your forces.
And I know that there are a couple of games that we have that are like that, but I think that in this one, everybody had a little bit of a different wagering system based on their faction as well, which is different than some of the other games that we have that are like that.
Well, and then there's the traitor mechanism where it's you might have a traitor of somebody's faction. If they play the wrong one, you can just immediately be your leader's gone.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Right, just totally cut them at the knees.
There's also the aspect of you have the different cards that are assassination weapons, so you can just totally kill off their leaders.
Yeah.
I also really like that game, but I did feel when we played it, we were playing with people that were not having as much fun as we were.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair.
Just because I think you and we're very good at being able to role play as traitors and power-hungry overlords, and that's not as easy to some people. Some people don't like to lie as often. Weird.
Number 38 for me is Dune. I can't believe that I ranked it higher than you, honestly.
I'm genuinely surprised.
That's one of those surprises for me. I thought that you liked it a lot more than I did.
I really like it. And again, I think it goes into a lot of what we've talked about, how we're basing them off a single playthrough that we did last year. Again, I feel like the friends that we were playing with it love them to death, but this did not seem like they were having the best time.
Sure.
And even though we won, and even though that always feels good, it doesn't always feel as good when you feel like everybody else was just dragging it out.
Sure.
But yeah, I would love to play that game with more people that are, I guess they don't have to be Dune fans, but just appreciate kind of the nastiness of it and are willing to kind of embrace that.
Well, yeah, because I think that's
aspect.
part of it is that it's not a nice fuzzy book.
No.
It is.
It's Game of Thrones style. I mean, you're backstabbing, you're tricking
absolutely.
people. And I mean, the best part is, this didn't end up happening in our game, but there's multiple times where you can break your alliances with people and form new ones. I mean, we almost broke an alliance, you and I, and then I went with the Traders Guild, but because we were playing with spouses, that didn't happen. Because apparently we wanted to stay married. So, it is what it is.
Yes. I mean, we won, so it worked.
Exactly.
It's fine. Anyways, so 38 for me was Dune.
Yeah. 37 for me is a game that I'm surprised I ranked higher than you, and that's Mysterium.
Oh, yeah.
So Mysterium, as you talked about, I think, wonderfully before, it's one of those games where you just have these really cool art cards.
They're so cool.
And the central premise of the game is one player is a ghost trying to get the other players who are paranormal detectives to solve their murder. And so they have to use these cards as clues to figure out
sending visions or dreams or something like that.
They're trying to figure out the suspect, the weapon, and the location of the murder. And it's really difficult as the ghost because you get a hand of these vision cards, and then you have to kind of come up with some sort of connection. So you pass them out to all the other players, and they look at the cards that you gave them, and they say, okay, based on this card of this mouse standing on a thimble, holding a spoon, wearing a crown, I think it was probably Sweeney Todd that killed you.
Right.
And, as the ghost, you can't say anything telling them what are you thinking or how are you making that connection? So it's really this game about how do you communicate without being able to communicate.
Right.
And what's I think the fun challenge is figuring out what those connections are.
Yeah.
And then seeing what other people talk, because there's a lot of times because the people at the table can converse with one another.
Yes. And people talk each other into and out of decisions constantly.
Which is so frustrating as the ghost, because you're just watching and going like, you got it. No, stop it. Why are you doing... No! You're right there! And that's all you can do.
Yep. You can't even do that.
Right. Yeah, you can't make faces. You just have to sit there stoically.
Your eyes just get bigger and bigger and bigger.
And then, of course, there's always that moment where people are going, how? How did you do this? And you can't say anything until the end of the game. And then you go, all right, look here, you idiots. This is why I did this.
Yes.
So it's a cooperative game where no one likes each other afterwards. Actually, we've won just about every time we've played.
We have. There have been very few that we have lost.
So, I mean, those connections are there. I think everybody just has a good fun. The other thing about the game that I feel like sometimes the players forget that the ghost certainly knows is that you only have a certain amount of cards in your hand.
Yes.
So sometimes you are just giving out a card to somebody because you're just like, there's no connection here, but I need to dump this card so I can get new ones.
Well, and we have consistently played on the easy mode where there's all of the ravens and the hand reset is what that is.
Right.
Where the ghost can discard their entire hand and draw new ones because they don't have anything. And according to that, there should be 3 times that you can do that in the entirety of the game.
Right.
But you can increase the difficulty by removing the number of times that you can do that. And we've never played on the super hard mode where you don't get a reset. That's just, it's one of those things where
you play for fun, not
right.
for...
Do you want it to be fun or do you want,
Right. Yeah, it's great. 37 for me. Mysterium.
37 for me is Great Western Trail.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a little surprising because you were telling me before that you were like, oh, this one really surprised me. I liked it a lot more than I thought it was.
Yeah. I
was thinking it was going to be in your top 20.
So here's the thing for me. The Wild West is not my favorite theme.
Well, okay.
So the fact that it broke the top 40, it almost made the top 3rd.
Okay.
Is, I feel really good. I did really enjoy, you move around the map in this game. And I think that the resource mechanism is really unique, where it kind of depends on what things other people build, what you build, what order you put them in. I like the dual aspect of you moving around and then the train.
Right.
I had a great time playing this game. I definitely would like to play it again.
I think it's worth noting that we actually played Great Western Trail Argentina.
Sure.
Which I think it's very similar, but I do think that there are some differences.
Oh, okay.
I think the train might just be Argentina.
Oh, really? Okay, interesting.
Not sure, because I haven't played the original Great Western Trail.
Sure. Okay, Great Western Trail Argentina.
Yeah, but I also really liked this game. In fact, I mean, we'll talk about it later, but this is another one of those games that really took me by surprise because I'm kind of like you. I knew this was going to be a tough sell when I was like, Kara, I brought home this great game.
I'm like, oh, great.
Right. But I was very happy that you enjoyed it. And I think it's another one of those that we've played it with 2, and I would like to play it with 4.
Oh, I would love to play it with
change
more.
Dramatically.
Especially because, that map is just going to get...
Oh, it's
gonna
so
get,
full.
It's going to get nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool game.
Very excited. Yeah, 37, Great Western Trail, Argentina.
All right, 36 for me is a game in the style of game that I think I like best.
Okay.
And that is a civilization building game. And that one is Civilization: A New Dawn. So I love these types of games. I think they're called 4X in some, because you're exploiting resources, you're expanding your empire, you're exterminating your opponents. And this one, I don't think there's opponent extermination.
Mm-hmm.
But I love taking something from, like, you have this group of 5 squares and you have stones, and then you build up from there
Mm-hmm.
to, like, in this game, you eventually get space age technology.
Right.
Which is just so fun for me. Like,
It
you can
is.
specialize in a tech tree and kind of follow along that. You're expanding your empire by putting outposts, and it has this, I think, really fun build-up of, like, everybody's kind of getting along, but there's kind of an uneasy truce to it of, like, okay, now you're getting a little close to my territory, bud.
Right.
What are you doing?
Right.
And then, of course, people start to battle.
Right.
I think the battling system in this is really simple, and this one has the turn mechanism that I really like, where you've got essentially 5 actions, and you pull a card down to do an action, but the longer you wait to do it until the next time,
powerful it gets.
the more powerful it gets. And I love that as a mechanism. I think it just adds a unique strategic element to it.
It does, yeah.
But yeah, I thought this game was so cool. I think it's a great replacement for the actual computer game or video game. I have certainly gravitated more towards board games now, and this is Civilization used to be one of my favorite video games, so this is a nice way to bring it to the tabletop.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, my number 36. Yeah, 36, Civilization.
36 for me is Terraforming Mars. Yeah.
One planet to the other.
Yeah. So Terraforming Mars it's a great game. I think that it can be a little slow to start. And so that's where I think we have played it with is it the Prelude expansion?
Yeah, Prelude.
Which honestly should just be part of the game.
Yeah, I really would not want to play it without the Prelude expansion, because you just start with resources and it gives you kind of an avenue to chase after.
Right. And it it can be slow to start. I think that the art is a little lacking. It's very
Oh, that's actually controversial right now, because of course
I know.
For this one they used a lot of stock images for,
Yes.
and then they put out a Kickstarter last year where
AI generated.
they're using
right?
AI generated
Yeah.
art, and it's like, you guys have sold millions of copies of this game. You can afford an artist.
Right. Anyways, we will probably not be upgrading our copy to that one.
No.
But it is a very fun game. I think that it is like the process of turning a planet into something that is habitable is like a really interesting theme to me. I think it's, in space games, it is unique.
Sure.
So, I've had a really great time playing this, the times that we've played it. I think that I generally lean towards strategies that haven't quite worked out for me. I haven't quite pinned down, like, what is the best move for me personally.
But I remember this was one that we played, and then as soon as we finished it, we were like,
we wanted to play it
this
again
tomorrow, and then it just kind of fell apart because we didn't get to.
Yeah.
The knock that I will say on this game, because I really love it, but boy, it's one of those that you absolutely need an upgrade for it, especially if you've got kids or pets that jump up on the table, because the player mats themselves, you're managing your income based on cubes, and if they get knocked just a little bit, you're going to be totally lost as to how much income you get, because there's no double overlay or anything like that.
Yeah, the like double layer player boards are like, I think we got like an overlay.
Yeah, it's just an acrylic overlay that just sits on top, and it's a huge game changer. I absolutely recommend it. It's one of those things that in board games that they would release now, that would be a standard.
Sure.
Like they would do a double layer board.
Yeah.
It just wasn't when that game released.
Yeah. So number 36 for me is Terraforming Mars.
Great. Well, number 35 for me is another space game, one that you ranked far too low, and everybody's upset by it.
Everybody.
Yeah, everybody that comments.
Sure.
They're upset by it, all 2 of you. Beyond the Sun.
Oh, sure.
So I know that space is not your favorite thing. And I know that you love great art. And this game has 2 strikes already for you. It is basically just a tech tree game with a map that you fly ships on the other side. It takes up a ton of space for what it is.
It's so big.
And it's obnoxious because you basically are putting these...
The text is also
the text is
small.
super small, and it really is kind of one of those games that everybody should be on the same side of the table to play so everybody can read it. But I still think it's one of the coolest games that we have.
It is very unique.
It's just so fun because you unlock new like technology that opens up new spaces to put your workers to take advantage of other things. The resources I think are super easy to manage. And it's really fun to like take the tiles off and to reveal other bonuses.
That is fun.
This is another one of those games that, you know, the first time we played it, I was just like, okay, well, it looks like a menu. It just looks like a computer menu that you are going through. But I find it so captivating because the actions in it are just so quick and snappy, and you're always doing something unique.
That's true. I do think that, you know, when we played it with 4 players rather than 2, the blocking of actions happened a lot more frequently.
Right.
And that was something that just, man, it gets in the way so quickly of getting anything accomplished. And so I think that is something that's a little frustrating. I know that that's like the point, right? Like that's part of the game. But I think that that's one of those things that pushed it a little lower on my list because that is something that is built into the game that I found incredibly frustrating.
That's fair.
Yeah.
They just released a new expansion for that adds leaders to it, which I think kind of does the same thing that Prelude does for Terraforming Mars.
Sure.
So I'd be interested to check that out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really love this game. I will always go for it. Number 35, Beyond the Sun.
My number 35 is Books of Time. Yeah. This game it's so cute.
Yep.
It is so gimmicky.
Yeah.
Like that. It's
super gimmicky.
And you know, the gimmick can like the actual building of the book is sometimes a little fiddly, right?
Sure.
Like they're tiny little two ring binders that are like, you know how opening binders are where you're like, ugh.
Takes you back to your school days.
It does. I feel like
this.
I'm in like elementary and middle school, you know. But the way that the books actually play is so interesting. And the like multi-action like page turn it's so thinky, and it creates such an interesting puzzle, and there's so much strategy to when you pick a page to go in one book versus the other, and when you choose to not pick one and flip your book back.
Yeah.
I mean, it is such a good puzzle. The actual like building of the book is like, it works.
Yeah,
it really
it's cute.
does. It's very cute. I had a grand time playing it.
Yeah, it's a good game.
Yeah. Number 35, Books of Time.
I think the only thing for me that would improve it is just like better art for it.
Yeah,
it's very generic, very brown.
For a game based on the idea of making a book, it is a little boring.
Yeah,
art wise.
Yeah. But yeah, I enjoy it too.
Yeah, very cool game.
34 for me. It's a game I don't think you've talked about yet, but I would say is more of a classic.
Okay.
It is maybe one of the only horror games that I think you like, and that is Betrayal at House on the Hill.
Oh, I do like that game a lot.
Which, you know, until I just said the full title right now, I don't know that I've ever called it by the full title.
Yeah, I think we just call it Betrayal.
Right. So Betrayal is one of these games where it's kind of like a dungeon builder. You're kind of throwing these tiles as you're discovering rooms, and then each room has mostly something bad that's going to happen to you, that you get an omen or an item or something else. But then after you've discovered a certain amount of rooms, haunt will start, and there's a selection of
it's after
so many omens
have been discovered, and there's a dice roll.
Right.
Yes.
But the book has 100 different haunts based on the room that the haunt was started in, the item that it was started in, and then like different things like who triggers it. And those haunts are just totally off the wall. I mean, we've played this a number of times, and I don't think we've ever had the same haunt.
We haven't gotten a repeat, yeah.
The downside to that is that some haunts are really cool and really well balanced, and some are dumb.
Mm-hmm.
And some just really don't make sense. Like, we played one where I was a banshee, and the rules were that I had to always go in a clockwise motion and just spiral around. And it wasn't much fun for me because I didn't feel like I had control as the betrayer. And then there's some that are really unique. Like, there was one that there are all these like plant arms that were dragging people back to the plant mouth,
Spoilers,
which is so cool.
Also.
I mean, you know.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm spoiling the game that's been out for almost 10 years.
That's fine.
But yeah, it's so fun. It's so off the wall and wild. The characters are ugly as all get out.
They sure are.
I mean, they've made a new edition of this game, a third edition, where I think they look a little better, but man, the minis that they come with just look awful.
Yeah.
But it's a really fun game.
It's
one that I think is horror themed, but I don't recall us playing that game without laughing.
Yeah. I also I think that the building of the house can be really satisfying as you're like drawing the tiles and trying to find either like the basement or the main floor or the top floor rooms, and seeing like there are some that can be in one or the other or any of the locations, and seeing just kind of the way that the house ends up laying out is so fun.
Or, you know, like you draw something that's like, oh, the walk-in closet, and then what's the item you find in there? The skeleton. Well, that tracks.
Yes. Yeah. Some very fun things that happen like that. I also, this is one where we have picked up some accessories that improve upon the game. So the tracker for your stats is so...
It's bad.
It's not good. It's like a little like arrow that like sticks on the edge of your cardboard like character piece, and you're supposed to slide it. And in the one that we have, like the arrows just don't quite point well enough at the numbers, you know. So we actually got there's like tracker wheels on it. Such a game
it makes
changer.
it so much better. Yeah,
it's
for sure.
so good. But you know, that's such a small thing. The game is fun regardless. Yeah.
But yeah, my number 34, Betrayal at House on the Hill.
My number 34 is a game called Decorum. Oh, is it so close?
Maybe it didn't make my list. I don't know.
There's no way. It was a really fun game. So this is a game that we played. It is not our game. It is one that we played with some friends. And it is such a good puzzle.
Yeah.
You know, you have your 4 roommates in a house, trying to satisfy everybody's tastes.
Yeah.
And their needs for what the house looks like. And so you're swapping room colors and paintings and lamps and curios.
Yeah.
And like on your turn, you like make one swap, you make a change, and then everyone gets to react. So they can either be like, oh my gosh, I love everything about this, or they can say, I'm indifferent, or I hate this. And
we chose to use more colorful language.
Yes, of course. But, you know, as you go through, like the goal is to find the configuration that satisfies everybody.
Right.
And I believe that this game is actually, it is a legacy game. Like it builds, right?
Well, it's one of those, I think they give you there are multiple scenarios. I don't know if it's a legacy per se, but you have different scenarios.
Yeah. And so we only played the first scenario.
Right.
But it is one that is so fun. It's so satisfying when you get it exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah, it's a great game. I really enjoy it, and maybe we'll talk about it soon. 33 for me, Treasure Island. My favorite hidden movement game. So just like you described this one before, probably no reason to really rehash it. One player is playing as Long John Silver. Whatever. It's like, wait, is that the fish place? It might be. I don't know my pirates anymore. But one person is playing as the one, and they've hidden a treasure somewhere on the map. They literally just pick a place, make a tiny X on their little map, and that is where the treasure is. Everybody else are just other pirates from the book Treasure Island. There's like, nope, I don't know any of them. There's Kermit, and and there's the human boy.
Of course, you're talking about the best version of Treasure Island.
Right.
Yes.
With Tim Curry.
Yes.
But yeah, you're all these people looking for the treasure on the island, and the way that you do it is actually really cool. So you have these compasses, and you are using like a dry erase marker, and you're drawing circles. And if the treasure is within the circle that you've drawn on the map, you found the treasure. Congratulations. It is one of those that when you are playing as the one who knows where the treasure is, those circles to everybody else seem so small. And it's like, oh God, how am I ever going to find anything? But to you, it is
They're huge.
A nightmare. I mean, you're just watching it and they are so close. What's really interesting about this game is as the game progresses in rounds, the other pirates have the option to ask Blackbeard or Silver or whatever. They're able to ask questions, and there comes a time where you, as the one, have to play certain cards that are things like you can tell them that who has been. You pick one player and tell them if the treasure is north or south of that person. And so, of course, as the one, you're looking for somebody that is the furthest south to say, oh, it's north of you.
Right.
But then they've got these tiny maps that they are looking at where that person is and marking out that entire bottom of it. And so then they also get like compasses that mark off different sections. And so everybody's map looks
There's also
different.
regions. And so they start out knowing that it's not in one specific place.
Right.
Yeah.
Which you also have to keep track of as the one because, again, you might subtly give it away. There's also a really interesting element of play there where the other pirates...
We are also competing against... I say we because I've never played as the one.
Right,
But the other pirates are also competing against each other. So it's not... It's like cooperative to a point.
Right. Because you don't necessarily want to share information because you want the treasure for yourself.
Right.
But if you just want to beat me... then you do share all your information. And that makes it even harder on the person that's the one. But I think it is probably one of the coolest games that we own. It is certainly the most unique. It is one of those that, for people that like games a lot, I always want to bring it to the table and say, like, well, you got to check this out. You're never going to play anything like it. So yeah, my number 33, Treasure Island.
Breaking the top third.
Yeah, that's great.
All right. My number 33 is Scythe. Yeah. This game is very cool.
Yeah.
I would say.
It's deceptive because you think it's going to be a war game.
It is based on the art and the name and kind of the theme. This kind of like post-apocalyptic or alternate future. I don't really know.
I guess it'd be alternative history.
Alternative history?
Yeah, because it's like after World War One.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's fair. Which, sure.
Yeah,
okay.
I get you.
But it's very, like, interesting the way that the, like, factions are laid out around this board. And, like you said, you think it's going to be a war game, but it's really not.
Yeah, it's really a resource management
bureau. You know, there's a benefit to like fighting somebody like twice, and then after that, it's actively bad for you.
Yeah, I mean, you lose popularity for starting to fight. Like if you displace workers or farmers, then you actively lose popularity.
Yeah. And, you know, it's kind of like at the beginning, it's a little bit of a race to the center, right? To get the factory. To get the factory and get the first of the options of like the special abilities that you get from there. But, you know, as you're going through the game and you're, you know, collecting the various victory objectives, you know, it's a really fun game. It's very interactive, but there's also a lot of like management of your own area of the board. And this is one where we have played it at 2 players and we've played it at 4. And it's a vastly different game with more players, in a good way.
Yeah.
Because, like many games, when you're playing with 2 players where there's a map, you can kind of stay away from each other.
Right.
And there's really not really anything that forces you to cross. Or to, beat somebody to that resource or that, to set up your camp there or whatever.
Yeah.
And when there's more people on the board, that's forced. And
Right.
it creates, interesting interactions.
Well, and it creates kind of that conflict like I talked about with Civilization, where you've got this, build to it where you're just like, okay, we're about to fight, but, maybe we can negotiate something here.
Right.
But yeah, I really like that game. It doesn't encourage fighting because, like you said, your goal is essentially to get victory points and achieve certain objectives. I think you have to achieve 6 to win the game.
Yeah, something like that.
And so you can only get 2 by fighting. The rest you have to do other things.
Yeah. I also think that this is a really interesting one where, you can be playing a faction with a different type of
combination.
With a different combination where your board and your available actions changes,
right.
And so the combinations and the replayability is really there. And I know that there are some that are they're don't play these 2 together,
right.
Which is one of the downsides of that type of system, but
at least they understand and they call it out,
right. Yeah.
I like that game a lot.
So it's a really fun game. I've enjoyed all of our playthroughs of it. Yeah. So 33 is Scythe.
All right, on to my 32. Decorum.
Oh, hey!
So yeah, really close.
Real close.
This is my favorite kind of logic puzzle. And I have to give kudos to the designers of this game because just like you talked about, it seems like something that could be so simple of everybody's got 3 objectives that they have to be fulfilled. But the way they do those objectives is nightmarishly specific.
It really is.
And they did such a great job of not doing the same thing. It's not just you have to have every room in the house painted blue. There might be that, but usually it's even more specific than that. It is you need to have a red object in every room, or you need to have one of each type of object in every room.
Or I only want 2 wall colors.
Right.
And so it doesn't matter which rooms are
right.
There just has to be a maximum of 2.
And so they did this, it's a masterful job of balancing those objectives for the amount of players that there are. And the reason that it's so you said, is it kind of a legacy game? Sort of. The puzzles are just so specific that you have to play certain objectives with certain objectives. There's also a really neat mechanic of every 5 turns you get to have a house meeting, and in that house meeting you're allowed to exchange one of your objectives with another player so that they can see one of the things you're trying to.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That helps with the communication so much because I always found I would go and give my objective to the person that kept messing up whatever I needed, and so then they would understand and maybe come together.
Oh.
But there are so many tricky objectives of it's not just the objects or the colors. Sometimes it's the 2 rooms that you have on top need to have less things than the 2 rooms on the bottom. Or this room needs to have 1 less than the room to the right of it. And so it's just this battle of because you can't communicate and say anything about it, I don't care what's there, it just needs to be there. You can't say that. You can only say I like it, I love it, I don't care.
Right.
And again, we use more flowery language to it, but it is super fun. I really like it a lot. It is everything that I wanted that picture perfect game to be. But good. So, spoilers, picture perfect did not make the list.
Yeah, I'm not mine either.
It's 32 for me, Decorum.
32 for me is Camel Up.
Camel Up.
Which
Camel
we've talked about it in the last video. It's so cute. I love the crazy camel mechanic. I think it's so funny that there are these like two camels that will just like go backwards.
Right.
And it can totally screw up everything.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Which is fantastic.
And
for
that's
just
the best when it does.
right. And it's just like that element of like silliness and chaos.
Yeah.
That really makes it super fun.
Yeah.
I think that bidding games are fine. But I think that, betting on the purple camel when the purple camel then ends up at the back because it got picked up by the white camel is like, it's just so funny.
It's very silly.
It's so silly. And it's also one, the components are just very satisfying.
Yes.
Like the camels that stack so perfectly, whether they're facing forwards or backwards.
Right.
They stack.
So wonderful.
And then the dice roller pyramid is also just like a very satisfying, like tactile feature.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think this is such a fun game, and it's really good for like not necessarily like super gamer people. Like we played it around the holidays, and it was really fun.
Yeah, it's a great one.
Yeah, 32 Camel Up.
Love it. All right, my final one for today, number 31, is another little puzzly game, and that is Honey Buzz.
Okay.
Honey Buzz is a really cute, not quite polyomino because everything that you're placing is in like I don't know what you call it, like a double tile. There are two tiles together. And the way that you get honey and fulfill honey is based on how those clusters connect. And so there's 5 different types of honey, and they're these cute like resin jelly pieces. It's so great. They're squishy. I love it. But you do that, and some honey is worth more than others, and when you sell it, you decrease the value of it for the next player.
Yep.
So it's really neat that way because you're kind of like finding these different ways to create a cluster, a 6-tile cluster of honey. And it's just this really fascinating game because you're kind of like, oh, okay, you're going after all the high value honey, so I can actually beat you to the punch on the low value honey and sell a bunch of that, and then you're going to be spending more turns building these clusters.
Yes.
There's also really just unique powers that you get for placing some of the tiles. Whether that is getting to place an additional tile or getting to just grow honey. I don't know, sprout it, make it. Science. Bees make honey, right? So it's a really neat game. I really like it a lot. It's both puzzly and kind of Euro-y at the same time because you're managing those resources.
Yeah.
But yeah, 31 for me, Honey Buzz.
31 for me is Fit to Print. Yeah, I really like this game a lot.
It's cute.
It is. I really enjoy polyomino games. I love that type of puzzle of fitting all of the pieces into the box. And this is one where your estimation skills on that space have to be pretty good.
It's definitely one that I think gets more fun the more you play it because then you get a better feel for the size of those tiles.
Absolutely.
And there's no like obscure like shapes of those polyominoes that you're grabbing, which is nice.
I think the thing that can be a little bit tricky is that the orientation of the text matters. Because there is an option, if you get stuck because you have, no space left and you have to place these two ads next to each other, but you can't place two ads next to each other.
Right.
So you can flip a tile over and place a blank. So it's not going to score you anything, but it's going to keep you from having a blank space on the board.
Right.
But it has to be the correct orientation. So it can't be one that should be horizontal that you're placing in a vertical spot.
Right.
So I think that can be a little tricky to like wrap your mind around at first. Also, just the size of the board, from the Friday print is the smallest and the Saturday print is just a little bit bigger. And then Saturday to Sunday just is such a big difference in real estate on the board.
Right.
it's wild. I think it is so cute. I think if you take a moment and like read through the headlines that you're actually placing, you know, it's so easy to just play like the game as it is and just, you know, like rush through the puzzles, but like just the headline, they're so funny.
They're very funny.
They're so cheesy. And it's just a truly darling game that is like a perfect quick puzzle. Yeah.
I like it a lot. It's a neat puzzly game, and I think it's one of those that it has a lot of rules up front to explain to people, because there's so many, like, you can't place this story next to that one.
Sure.
But once people play it for the first time, I think that becomes pretty understandable.
Yeah. And like we talked about when you talked about it first, we've played it on the 5-minute.
Yeah. We've never played it on anything less than the relaxed.
Right. And, you know, it's already so hectic and frantic that I think I would like to try it on a higher difficulty, but also, like, it's really just kind of fun how it is. And sometimes, like, there have been rounds that I have made it, like, right up to the buzzer. So, I think it's really fun.
I think the one rule about this game that I see people breaking all the time, and I try to remind them of, is that the rule is if you grab a tile and they're all face down and you flip it over and you don't want it, you have to put it face up, but you always have to bring one back before you flip it over. I think in the franticness of the timer, people are good about it at the start, and then they start like flipping it over and looking, and then they're like, oh shoot, I'm not supposed to do that.
Right.
Because they're panicking.
Yeah. I do think a really interesting one, we had like the secret.
Oh, you have to take
every tile that you grab. You have to keep it. Oh man, that was so devious.
And it drove me out of business.
It sure did. Anyways,
happy about it.
I think Fit to Print is great, and that is my number 31.
All right, so that concludes tonight's list. I'm really excited about the upcoming list because there are top 30 for the year and of all time, as it were.
Sure.
But if you're having a great time with these lists and you're looking forward to the next one, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel so you'll be alerted when the next video drops. I'm expecting some crossover in the next list.
We've gotten really close on a couple.
I know what's still to come on your list, and I'm very excited to talk about some in the near future.
Same.
All right. Well, thanks for stopping by. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.